Welcome to Alpha Book Club. Hi, Internet. I'm Hector Navarro. Maude and Rachel are currently stuck in a trash compactor fighting off a trash monster creature that found its way onto the Death Star, guys. So be tweeting at them and saying, we miss you. May the Force be with you. You guys are great. But joining me this week, our Nerdist producer and super Star Wars fan, Mr. Jesse Gill. Yes. Round of applause, Jesse. So excited you're here.
Thanks for having me.
And one of my good friends, Bert Jennings, is here. Bert. Bert also runs a Star Wars role-playing game, so you can check out Bert's info to kind of get updated on that. Suffice it to say, two huge super Star Wars nerds. And me, I've always considered myself a bit of a cash fan. But so excited you guys are here because we are going to be discussing the book Thrawn. We'll get to that in a second. But of course, always a warm welcome to our Alpha community, guys. The chat. You guys are fantastic. We cannot do the show without you. We really love seeing you guys, and we want to be reading a lot of comments tonight. We really love seeing that insight that you bring to the chat. So let's get into our second week of discussion about Timothy Zahn's Thrawn. Woo. First up, we got to do the previously on section. Now, you guys are coming in hot, and you were reading the second section, but you were also like in process of reading the book. You were nice enough to sort of catch up generally to where we're at so that we can talk about section 2, chapters 8 through 15. But let's do it previously on. Timothy Zahn, author of the old EU Thrawn novels, Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command. The novel takes place after Revenge of the Sith and the Fall of the Republic, but before A New Hope, because now this is canon. Yep. Now, before we get into that and some of that background, question for you guys. Have any of you read those original Thrawn novels, the Timothy Zahn stuff?
Oh, yeah.
You did?
I did.
You did.
I literally was reading, I was halfway through Heir to the Empire when this came out, and I shelved it to then read this to then go back.
That's awesome. Well, guys, tell us a little bit about those books. What was it like reading those when those were coming out, 1990, 1991? When did you read them? What did you think?
I'm just like anybody else. I grew up obsessed with Star Wars, and there's levels to it. People exist someplace on that spectrum. I remember being, I guess at 91, I would have been 10 years old. Wow. I remember, I guess I just dated myself. My bad.
Look at them right there.
Yeah, I have those books.
I remember being with my mom in line at the supermarket and seeing one of those on the stand and being like, there's books? There's Star Wars books? And that the Thrawn trilogy was what opened the door to the EU. Ooh. I think that's true for a lot of people. That was really kind of what made 100%. The EU kind of pop.
Even I knew about Thrawn, and I had not dived into the EU sort of coming up just from my friends and stuff like that. And if you can pull up the picture too of the new covers as well, I think these are gorgeous too. The new covers that Star Wars Disney Books is now printing that have the Legends little line on there, right? It's not the original covers.
I still call it the EU.
Yep. It's still
you can call it you can call it Legends all you like, but it's
for sure. Look at that. I think those are rad. And
those are gorgeous.
It's really cool because I know Bert and I have had this discussion. Bert, you've got mixed feelings about Disney taking over Lucasfilm, obviously because Star Wars is very true to your heart. Yeah. And one of the first things Star Wars fans heard was none of that stuff counts anymore, which is heartbreaking. It's devastating. It sucks, right? Especially when a character like Thrawn, who only existed in the EU, is now sort of disappeared. But lo and behold, we've got a new Thrawn novel. We've got the character appearing, voiced by Mads Mikkelsen's brother, in Star Wars Rebels, which is canon. And
so spot
Disney's still printing the old stuff. Yep. So I think it's really, really cool. But Bert, can you give us a quick sort of summary of your experience reading the original Thrawn novels?
Yeah, so if they came out in 91, I must have been 6 at the time.
Dated
7?
Yourself, wow.
So I read it in grade school, trying to explain to all my other friends why this was the coolest thing since sliced bread, and they're all like, "Get outside more." But no,
overrated. It's overrated.
And I had the exact same thing where it opened up an entire universe of wait, so there's Star Wars beyond the movies, because up to that point it's my dad introduced me to Star Wars.
Movies, that's it.
And it was that was it, and you had your toys, but then you started reading all these stories, and the Thrawn trilogy is so I'm rereading it now to be does it still hold up? And so far I'm this is pretty spot on. Yeah. But it just opened up the entire universe of wait, Star Wars exists outside of this movie. I have so much fun playing in this space. I want to read how other people play in this space.
Really quickly, Hector mentioned that you had mixed feelings about the Disney takeover.
Yeah.
To me, being a kid, even with the EU and getting into all that material, there was always a point where you ran out of stuff to get into. Yeah. There was only so much to read.
I totally,
so much to watch. And the thing that I do love about the Disney takeover is that now I'm so behind
Yeah.
that I will
That's true.
literally
That's true.
never run
That's
out of
true.
Star Wars
That's
to get
so
caught
cool.
up.
I get that. I can
That's
see
so
that.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. I'm 2 seasons behind on Rebels. Like, I still have to watch all of Clone Wars. I know that was before the Disney
That's a
takeover,
good
but
problem
still-
to have.
Yeah,
it's a great problem
Yeah.
to have. It's a great problem to have. But
Yeah.
it's that's a great point, Jesse. I really like that. So that brings us to our very special guest. Yeah, I think it's Lars Mickelson. Yeah, but we should really call him Mads Mikkelsen's brother.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel bad. No, Lars is great.
No,
Lars
yeah.
is great.
Galen Urso's brother, Doug Urso.
Yeah, Doug Urso.
Yeah.
So this is great, guys. We've got a member of our community joining us via Skype. Let's all say hi to Miranda, who's joining us. Hi, Miranda.
Hi, Miranda.
Are you there?
Hello.
Hi guys.
Hi. Thank you so much for calling. I'm going to turn down my earpiece. It's super loud. Yeah. Let me turn that way the hell down. Where's the volume on this bad boy?
I think
Other
I can
side?
hear you.
What?
Oh, sorry.
Huh?
Sorry, Miranda. This is all my fault.
Oh boy.
Here, it's this thing.
Oh, you've got it?
How are you doing
That
today?
can't be for me. Anyway.
Good.
I was actually really excited to share this today because I'm a teacher at an elementary school, and
cool.
we're celebrating Teacher Appreciation Week this week. And one of my kids did a drawing of me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Look at
That's
that.
awesome.
That's very cool.
Miss
So it was-
Miranda.
And it came in with like the whole May the 4th last week. I'm just reading all of this.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Well, happy Teacher Appreciation Day. Come on, guys. Everybody in the chat, give it up for Miranda. Happy Teacher Appreciation. Well, that's so fantastic. Again, thank you so much for calling us. So what have you been thinking about the book so far, Miranda? What do you think?
Okay, so far I really liked the first part of last week, and this one was a little bit slow because I'm not really used to reading all of these like battle scenes and everything. I'm more of like a different type of novel, I guess.
Yeah.
So it was a little difficult, but I'm really liking it, and I'm really liking especially how they keep on building Thrawn's character and how they keep on like giving him more and more responsibility, and he's just like taking the world by the storm, and it's just really awesome.
I love it. Yeah, I love it.
He's on that grind.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He
He's
is.
a hustler. He's a hustler. So, Miranda,
I
are you...
really like the little bits at the beginning of each chapter, and somebody mentioned last week that they kind of related to Sherlock and Watson.
Yep.
Yes.
And I related to Sherlock, the series. You know, like Sherlock has this blog that nobody reads that has like an article about 200 different types of hash or something like that. I feel like if Thrawn had a blog, it would be this.
Yeah. Yeah, just like those little summaries of like how to be a good tactician. It's like, who would be reading that blog? I don't know who would even be reading that.
I, for one, would like and subscribe.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Miranda, do you think that Thrawn is, because again, I think having some background information about the character, I know that he's supposed to be a bad guy. And in this book, he is the protagonist. He's the main character, one of the main characters. Do you feel like he's a sympathetic character, or do you feel like we're building towards something a little bit more sinister?
I think that we are. I think that they're gonna try to build us up into a character that you're gonna like, but then you realize that all of his motives are kind of like the wrong ones.
Yeah.
And sometimes I even relate it to like the conquerors in like when the Spanish people came to America.
Sure.
If I was reading a little bit about Thrawn, and he said that it says that he usually thinks that to be able to take over a planet, they need to know about the philosophy and the art and the culture.
Yes.
And I kind of think a little bit of how the Spanish people came, like the Spanish conquistadores came to America, and like for example, Cortés, who came over to Mexico, and he took advantage of the fact that the Mexicans thought that he was a god.
Yep.
So it's very sinister. And I also think that Thrawn is kind of like that, sort of has that mentality of saying, you know what, I'm going to be able to take over these people by knowing how they work and how they think.
I love it. Yeah.
Classic Thrawn.
Yeah.
Are you picking up techniques for how to deal with your class, your elementary school class?
You know what? A little bit, yeah. But
great.
yeah, I think that they're definitely gonna build us up to, liking him. But then at the same time, you're gonna say, "Whoa, this is not right."
What do you think's going to happen, Miranda? What do you think's going to happen? What are some predictions that we can get from you? Because we're technically halfway through the book, right? So we have another 2 weeks to go. But what do you think's going to happen?
Yeah. I really don't. I hope this doesn't happen. But maybe at some point he's gonna like backstab Eli.
I knew
at
it.
some point.
I knew it.
Wrong is gonna happen with Eli because he's been
so
with Eli all this time and he's been his aide, but then eventually it's just gonna be like he's gonna try to, because he wants to go get to power to be able to do what he wants. He's gonna be like, you know what, I don't care.
The first time I read the name Eli Vanto, I was like, oh, that guy's going to get screwed.
Because he has a very sympathetic name.
Totally.
Yeah. And he's not in any other Star Wars thing related to Thrawn.
Nope.
Like, he's not in Star Wars Rebels, right? Standing next to him.
No.
He's probably going to die. Let's be real. He's probably going to die in this book.
He's cannon fodder. Blaster fodder.
Blaster fodder. Canonical blaster fodder. So, last question for you, Miranda. Is this the first Star Wars novel that you've read, and would you read more?
Yes. Yeah, no, I would definitely love to read Heir of the Empire to, like get a little bit more into Thrawn. I think it's a very fascinating character, and especially reading like the backstory of him, it will make me really interested in seeing how he becomes the bad guy eventually. So it's really exciting, and this is my first Star Wars novel, so it was really fun.
That's cool.
Well,
First
Miranda,
of many.
Miranda, thank you so much for
Yeah.
calling in with us. And one more time again, happy Teacher
Yeah.
Appreciation Day, Miranda. Thank you so much for doing the most unappreciated job in the world and the most important. So huge thanks for that. And hopefully we'll talk to you again and keep enjoying the book. Thanks again, Miranda.
Thanks, Miranda.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh, Miranda, I think she's going to get her heart broken. I really do.
I
think
don't
we're all
know.
going to get our heart broken.
I don't know.
That Thrawn is going to turn out to be a real piece of work.
Okay. That's your perspective on it. I think he's a good guy the whole way through.
But you're
so
like an Empire guy all the way. That's what you care about. That's what you care about, Bert. So to go back a little bit, the sort of previously on, up to this point, we learn about Thrawn and his backstory of getting sort of picked up on this planet when he's a young-ish man. Well, probably not too many years before this story takes place, but he's been like marooned on this planet for disagreeing with his sort of his elders of his very obscure and hidden species and race that not a lot of people have. They're like a legendary race. He gets picked up. He gets paired with Eli Vanto because he can kind of translate for him, and then it just keeps going from there. We meet the politician character, Arinda, I think is her name. I forget, but we'll have it here in a second.
Who's also from Rebels.
Is she really?
Yes, she's an Imperial officer in Rebels. So part of this book, her character
is her.
Correct me if I'm wrong in chat, but I think
Okay.
that's true. Yeah, she's at least in this last season, she's the female, or she's the woman Imperial officer
With that
we see.
haircut?
Yeah, that's Arinda Price.
Arinda
Correct?
Price.
I
Arinda
think
Price.
that's true.
I think you might be right. That's very cool. Right there, to the right of Thrawn.
Yeah.
That
That's Miranda.
blue bastard.
It's my girl
That's
Miranda right there.
awesome.
He's so dope.
That's awesome. Arinda Price? It's
Arinda,
yeah.
not Miranda.
Yeah.
Arinda.
Miranda was the Skype guest.
Correct,
Yes,
correct. That's very exciting. That's really, really cool. So each chapter begins with an inner monologue where he sort of like, just like Sherlock Holmes sets up how to be a good leader slash soldier.
Art of war.
Art of war, which is really, really cool. Some of the themes that we've dealt with so far are that Thrawn is an outsider, and they kind of go into some of the themes of race and how the Empire treats outsiders and people from the outer world as well, not the core world, which I think is really, really fascinating. You're not going to see that stuff in a Star Wars movie, but they're going into like Eli telling Thrawn like, people are racist towards you because you're an alien and not a human type character.
Just a quick FYI,
Yeah.
just so you know.
Exactly,
Yeah.
just a heads up. So how are you guys liking this approach, this sort of Eli and Thrawn hero sidekick, but a lot of it is from Eli's perspective. How do you guys think about it so far?
I like that the name Sherlock Holmes has popped up already a few times. That's the first thing that I thought of, at least in terms of the way that Thrawn examines people that he's interacting with. As you're reading the book and you're seeing the exchange, he's in his own mind dissecting person's tone of voice, what kind of body language is telling him, which is really similar to a lot of the modern characterizations of Sherlock Holmes.
Absolutely.
Another thing, I wanted to bring this back. I saw this in chat earlier. T-Boyce from chat mentioned, I do like how Eli in Thrawn's dynamic seems to be very Holmes and Watson. If Eli Vanto does not get screwed at the end of this book, which I probably think he's going to be, he could be on the track to be the new Gilead Pelion.
Yeah.
And Pelion, as we know, and this is what T. Boyce brought up in the chat earlier, he was the original Watson to Thrawn's Sherlock.
Oh, and in the original trilogy.
Yeah, so if he doesn't get screwed, he might have a pretty decent career trajectory for him. It's worked out for him so far in this book. That is if he doesn't get screwed at the end, but I think he's going to get screwed.
I think it's also really fascinating that, just a kind of a sidebar, that the whole story is from the perspective of people in the Empire.
Yes.
And that there are like innocent people in the Empire that are like trying to do a good job. They're trying to do their jobs. They're they're in politics, or they're in the Navy essentially, and they see the Rebel Alliance as like rogue terrorists or smugglers. They're like, technically, yeah, they are criminals. Like you have to. I think it's a really interesting perspective that you don't often get. But then I remember like, oh yeah, wait, they're all led by the Emperor, who's like a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Like it's that thing of like, if only they weren't led by the Emperor, right? What if like Luke Skywalker ended up like what would the dynamic be? And it is all for power, and it is all this and that, but there are like innocent people and innocent families that get swept up into this.
But that's kind of what I love about it, is someone who's from like this kind of like imperial perspective when it comes to Star Wars, and it's like you and I say that knowing what that means, but it's like the book gives you a different slice of life, right? We always see these different things where it's either from like the smuggler's perspective or like the rebel pilot or like this Jedi, but it's like, no, these are just kind of rank and file dudes in the Empire. But it's, you're seeing these things like the Ascension Day, right? Where it's like a whole week festive, celebrating the Empire, right? And it's like most of the time, and it's reasonably so because it's kind of how it was set up, it's the Empire is very Third Reichian. And it's, when you kind of, you think of it, right? But the book, it doesn't shy away from that, but it kind of paints in this perspective like, okay, cool, but like, what if it was from more of like the Roman Empire kind of perspective? And at that point, you're like, well, I can see why people would get along with this, right?
I can see that influence in there, absolutely.
But at the same time, and you kind of see this through Arinda Price's story and what has happened to her family.
Yeah.
Because this is the early days of the Empire, relatively speaking, we know the Empire best from its later days.
Yes.
From the
original
end
trilogy,
but this is the beginning, or at least near the beginning, and folks like Arinda Price and her family are just now starting to understand, the Empire kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Which no one knew before.
Yeah.
And that's not the way Palpatine sold it, but now they're realizing they're getting a bum deal.
Oh, man.
And that's what's interesting is all the politics stuff, because by the time we
really
open up in A New Hope, it's like the Senate's gone. So it's like we're seeing stuff where I'm like, I didn't even know this because it's not there. So
and it's so crazy that, and this is something that we've dealt with literally with every book in this show, Alpha Book Club, for the past couple months. Every book we've done, one a month, is that it feels like, man, there's still stuff that you can draw from this crazy sci-fi fantasy fiction that's like it's relevant to what people are going through today. A bunch of people voted for a dude, and now they might be like, wait a minute, like it's in there. You can easily make those kind of comparisons, and it's a bummer, man. I feel for those people. It's a real bummer. But let's.
One could also say that we could have drawn those same conclusions moving into the election.
Sure.
And didn't.
Yeah. I know. Tell me about it. Let's take a drink. That's right.
Cheers.
Drink to that. There we go. Mastera says, I think that Zahn does an amazing job at building this universe. I honestly agree too. And since you guys are big Star Wars guys, I kind of want to skip to this. I don't know if this is in there. How accurate is it to like the timeline of Star Wars canon? Because they mention the Clone Wars often. They mention the Buzz droids. They mention. Has there been anything that they mentioned so far that you've read where you're like, yeah, I remember that from another thing, or yes, that makes sense. That lines up.
It's sprinkled all the way through, like just like the referencing to like ships and like places and events in like the Clone Wars, because that's kind of, you're coming off the heels of that. And again, in the context of the story, it's like you can understand why people are going along with the Empire so much, because it's like, hey, we just finished this
war,
civil war, right?
Yeah.
But anytime there's a ship where I'm like, oh, wait a second, I don't know what that name is, I'd look it up and I go, oh yeah, that one, and I'd instantly recall everything else, right?
Yeah.
And it's, I think so far they've done a really good job of, again, having stopped Heir to the Empire to then cut into this. There's the EU, right, and then there's the Legends, right? But this is technically canon, but it's done such a great job of, I could easily put this book in front of Heir to the Empire, and it adds so much to a book that's not necessarily supposed to.
Canon, it's Ultimate Thrawn.
Yeah.
It's like Marvel's Ultimate imprint, or at least
really
what
good.
it used to be.
Sure.
That's not what it is now, but it's kind of the same idea, because it takes a lot of those same canon story points and details about the Chiss culture. Works those in really subtle and fun ways.
Yeah.
In terms of how it deals with the current overall canon, same thing. Yeah, I feel like there's little bits and nuggets like sprinkled throughout the book, which has been great, because that's been the way all of these new new canon Star Wars books have been, at least for me. I've read most of them, not all of them. I'm still working through a few of them. I'm working through like 3 at the same time. Cool. But that's the Lucasfilm Star Wars story group at work. That's what that is. And that's what they're there for, is making sure that, like, not only in the novels, but the comics and the video games and the movies, we have all these little sprinkles, things and things that for people like me, when we see them, they're like, oh, I know what that is.
Yeah.
But it's for me, that's been super rewarding. For sure.
I want to talk about this, guys. Thrawn's relationship with art. Miranda, our guest earlier, she mentioned it. Thrawn really appreciates the finer things in life. He's a cultured individual. And I even marked down a section in the book that I wanted to read because I thought it was so badass. It was so interesting, so cool. But there's a section where he talks about art. For some, it was a measure of culture. For others, it was a measure of wealth. For most, it was a matter of simple enjoyment. For Thrawn, it was an invaluable tool. The Thunder Wasp's computer library had only a limited catalog of art reproductions, and only 3 pieces of those were from Umbara. Fortunately, Thrawn had spent the past 3 years building up an extensive collection of data cards that rivaled the best art archives in the Empire. He sat in his cabin, surrounded by holograms of sculptures, flats, mobiles, kinetics, interactives, and other art forms the Umbarans had developed and explored over the centuries. Of particular interest were the subtle changes that had taken place between works created before and after the Clone Wars. The other Chiss didn't understand. They never had. He'd been asked innumerable times how he was able to build such detailed tactical knowledge from such obscure and insignificant ingredients. The question carried its own answer. To Thrawn, nothing in a species' art was obscure or insignificant. All the threads tied together, all the brushstrokes spoke to him, all the light curves told the story of their creator. Artists were individuals, but they were also products of their culture and history and philosophy.
Yep.
The weave of artist and culture was evident to the discerning eye. The fundamental pattern of a species could be sketched, then drawn, then fully fleshed out. Most important of all, the relationship among art, culture, and military doctrine could be deduced, and what could be deduced could be countered. That's terrifying.
Yeah, it really
but
is.
so cool and so smart.
Yep.
I love that stuff.
Can we start a new show where I just drink wine and Hector reads Star Wars to me? Because that was awesome.
Yes. Chapter 16.
Alpha Hector reads.
Alpha read along.
To me.
Alpha
Nobody
read
else.
along to Jesse, yeah. I mean, how do you guys feel about the way that Timothy Zahn is writing Thrawn? Because this is a tricky balance.
Yep.
When you read in fiction a character that is supposed to be the smartest guy in the room, whether it's Sherlock or Hannibal,
Sure.
right, played by Mads Mikkelsen in the Hannibal show, or Batman, or Iron Man, or Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four is a great example that, like, good Fantastic Four comics for me are hard to come by because that's such a tough balance. How do you do that thing and still make him, like, relatable, approachable? How do you guys feel that Zahn, up to this point, is doing? Is he doing a good job, or do you feel like it's a little distant?
I think there's points in this, like especially within the section for these chapters, where it's very easy to kind of, and it was kind of mentioned earlier, push Thrawn into like a demigod kind of level,
right,
where he's almost too smart, right? So it's like, okay, cool. Well, at that point, once somebody just instantly solves everything, they're not interesting anymore, despite it even being Thrawn, right?
Yeah.
And I found there were moments where it was subtle and it's simple, but there are either setbacks that he comes into when it comes to him understanding the social element of things, right? And him having the conversation of like, I don't understand how politics has anything to do with promotions. And she's like, well, let me tell you, right? And it's like you're seeing, so there's a level where he's a master of his field in this, and yet, he'll come setback. So they're kind of...
But naive and inexperienced in this.
In these levels.
That's where Vanto comes in, or that's where, totally.
And then you're kind of seeing these, we keep going to this, the Sherlock well, but this, his nemesis, right? What is,
no, in the book.
In the book.
It's, what is it, Newsflash? No, what is it? I've got a theory about that. I'm going to look up, guys.
Yes,
Night Swan.
right.
Swan. Ooh.
Or you're seeing somewhere where he's like straight up being like, no, like this is him challenging me, and you're like, it's like that's really egotistical, but I kind of believe it, right?
Yeah,
I kind of respect that. Yeah.
So I think that's the part where you're seeing these, it's so easy to make him, because he's just a beloved character. He solves everything. He comes in the room and he just Tony Stark's everything. And you're like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing these levels where oh, okay, he messed up there, or like, oh, he didn't get all that Tabana gas, and like now everyone's kind of on his butt.
And it seemed like in that whole sequence, the Tabana gas sequence, it like, oh my God, Thrawn is amazing.
Yes.
He's going to crush it. And then he like, we
doesn't
lost him,
do
we
it.
didn't
Yeah.
yet. I thought that was really, really good. And just about Night Swan, here's my theory on this before we get to you, Jesse. I think that Thrawn is Night Swan.
Ooh.
Boom. Did you think the same thing?
I didn't, but I do now.
I think that now he's like, he goes to his quarters at night. He goes to his quarters at night and he's literally like, I'm going to make an order for this and this and this, and I am Night Swan. And it'll give him an excuse to go and do all of the shit that he's doing.
So you're saying that
the end of the
Thrawn's
book is going to be
master
like,
plan
is I am Night Swan.
is that he's catfishing fools.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because that's what these
like
types of characters always end up doing, is they always end up catfishing the hero or the rest of the world or whatever, and they're like, no, I had to set up this fake war so that we could go in and invade. Like, it happened in Mission Impossible 3. Billy Crudup's character did the same exact thing. Thrawn is Night Swan, I'm telling you. Spoilers
it
for
happened
Mission
in the
Impossible 3. Go
prequels,
see
man.
it.
We thought, we thought that Chancellor Palpatine was the Chancellor
it's
when
already-
he was the Senate the whole time.
It's already established in Star Wars canon. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But how do you think Timothy Zahn's doing so far with that sort of like, is he too smart or is he...
Oh, I think he's nailing it, but I think he has an unfair advantage.
Yeah.
He created this character like a long, long time ago.
It's so cool that Disney
and now he gets another
got
shot.
Timothy Zahn to do this. Like, there's no better writer.
I don't think you could do it.
Yeah.
I mean, the show's doing a fantastic job
Sure.
with that portrayal, but when it comes to like the fact that
Like doing a novel about him.
The show is cool, but in Rebels, he just kind of pops in and out throughout the season, and he's that overlord bad guy that we know is out there. Yeah, totally. But this kind of gives you a little more of a look inside of what makes Thrawn tick, which you don't get so much of in Rebels.
Yep.
You get some stuff when he starts talking about art and things like that, but you don't really get the nitty gritty of why Thrawn is who he is.
Yeah.
And that's what this book is for. At least that's what I'm getting from it.
totally.
I agree. Ooh, Mostera says, ooh, it would be amazing if it was Eli Vanto.
Oh,
Don't see it
shit.
happening. I think he's too dumb. I think he's just too much of a regular guy. But that's great.
He's a
great.
good old boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely a good old boy. So I drive an insane amount of miles to get to work every day.
You should move.
Well, what I do, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. But what I do is that's how I get through the Star Wars canon is I listen on my Audible playlist
That
or
would
whatever.
make sense, yeah.
Somebody else in the chat said that too, yeah.
So if you're listening to any of the Star Wars books on audiobook, there's some interesting choices for the voice characterizations, and Eli Vanto, I think, is one of them. They kind of speak to it in the prose of the book, where they talk about how he's a yokel and he's from wild space.
He has an accent. That's a wild space accent.
In the book, he sounds like he's from the South.
I love it.
wow.
I think that's perfect.
Which we've never seen in Star Wars.
Yeah.
We kind of have it. The closest we've seen so far is like Han Solo, and to kind of feed into that is that, and I only say that because like Harrison Ford could be from Indiana.
True.
Yeah.
Not just because Indiana Jones, but like he could be from like the Midwest, right? But he's still a little bit just like he's almost has like a slow drawl, a little bit, just a teeny tiny bit. But I think it also feeds into that we're being told that the Han Solo prequel movie is supposed to be a Western set in Star, which is like, that makes sense. He's a smuggler and it's the Outer Rim. And that's what we've been told. It's very similar to Firefly. This is the Old West section of space. And then the core and the Empire is always white British dudes.
Yes.
It's what we conceive of as like the most classy, sort of like distinguished kind of voice.
And let's just be honest. What's the what do we think of white British dudes thinking of folks with a? They probably look down on you.
Put that on them, but you're absolutely
But that's
right.
part of it. That's
absolutely
part
right,
of I think what they're creating there. So all these highfalutin imperial types look down on the.
Now I want to
guy
read
from
some.
Wild
Now I want to
Space.
read some Eli Vanto, but like in like a Southern accent.
Yes.
Like,
let me get my wine.
okay,
Oh,
I
yeah,
want
good
to.
point.
I want to see if I can do something because now I'm picturing like, let's just go full bore with it. I'm picturing Lucas Black from the movie The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. The star of that film.
Okay.
The star of that film.
Hold on, let me get in
Not
the right
a great movie.
headspace.
I love that movie.
Okay.
But
Pull.
where he's just like,
Yeah.
what's DK mean? Like Donkey Kong? I'm gonna learn how to drift. I'm gonna go save.
You
my
might
girlfriend.
ruin this character
I'm gonna
for
go
me.
save- This is Eli Vanto. I'm Eli Vanto. Not that we've heard, sir. Eli said. Yeah, it's already
Yeah,
like,
you
what a
can't-
jackass.
yeah.
You're already like, oh, this guy. Oh my gosh. Let's see here. Here we go. Eli let his gaze drift away. Yes, people like him. People who still had the lowly rank they'd graduated the academy with, while everyone else was energetically climbing the ladder. I've had a glass of wine. But this conversation wasn't about him. This conversation and warning were about Thrawn. They'd probably come after me if they thought I was worth the effort, he said, sidestepping the question. Wait, that was Eli. They'd probably come after me if they thought I was worth the effort, he said, sidestepping the question. Do you suggest I try to be less capable? Of course not, Eli said firmly. You do that and more people will die and more bad guys get away. I'm just pointing out that you need to be aware that you're in this political crosshairs. I understand, Thrawn said. I will endeavor to learn the rules and tactics of this form of warfare. In the meantime, is there anything we can do for Commander Cheno?
I like how you slipped Thrawn in there real quick. That was
that's
nice.
Thrawn.
That was nice.
Just wish him well, I guess, Eli said. Even if you could persuade someone to listen to an appeal, he'd never command a ship again. This way, at least he got to go out on a high note. Except that we know it was only a partial victory. We suspect, Eli corrected, lowering his voice. We don't know that's what Night Swan was going for. He pointed to the door ahead, the door with the simple gold Imperial Security Bureau plaque above the smaller Colonel Wulf Yorlarian nameplate. maybe this is where we'll get those answers. Yeah, that's Eli now.
No.
Yep.
For me.
Yeah.
Is that what it
For now-
sounds like for the audiobook? A little less, I would hope.
Kind
right?
of a little less. Yeah, no, but it's along the same lines, and so you kind of your mind kind of makes those.
That's not
jumps
Southern.
in.
Yeah.
Come on, that's Southern, guys. Come on, Pinkish. Give me there's different Southerns. There's different. But
You
that's
should have been.
definitely
You
one
should have
of them.
been Cajun.
I feel like that. What I was doing was like Texan. That's what I was doing was Texan, Cajun. That's too much. Couldn't even understand him.
Yeah.
Southern accent. Listen, the Texas is the South, technically, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's south
South
from
of
here.
somewhere. Yeah.
Every place is south of somewhere. Take another drink. All right.
Yep.
T-Boy says that Eli is described as being from a backwater world in wild space. So I tried to find a British-like accent that would sound
Interesting.
colonial and stand out from the received pronounced of the core world's Imperials, which is really interesting.
So like
Okay, great.
an Aussie or like a.
Maybe like I'm from Liverpool, like a British kind of an accent, but not in like England, not in London rather. Sorry, not in again glass of wine.
Yeah.
Not in London, England, but like somewhere else. I don't know England enough to make that call. Anyway. Also, Arinda Price, she's rising up the ranks. She lost her job.
Yep.
Now she's working for her buddy in that, I forget what the name of the thing is, that sort of like office that helps people.
Higher calling worlds of minds.
But she's making her way up there. And now there's been a couple of times where she sort of crossed paths with Thrawn until the very end of the section is she goes to or rather, she's in like a self-defense class, and Thrawn and some people show up, and then that's where they sort of start interacting a little bit more. So, what do you guys make of her sort of storyline, and how do you think that it's ultimately going to collide with Thrawn's?
At first, I wasn't really into it, and it was mainly because I was like, "This is taking away from my Thrawn time. Like,
Right.
bring me back."
Same.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I slowly started getting into it when they started getting into to the politics level, because I'm like, again, it's like I've never seen this Imperial Senate side before, so this is interesting. And then, there's all these it escalates very quickly. With it's just like drugs and the cocaine, and then throw in your
was
face.
crazy, yeah.
It's nuts. And then it kept going, and then it was like this weird story of then, her trying to get back into the system, but then she's working in kind of like this weird offshoot. So like,
I thought it was so ballsy and so smart that she goes to this place that has like shitty like offices. And
Yeah,
this woman is
dude.
like rude, and she knows that she wants her to be rude to her.
Yeah.
So then she just walks into the boss's office and was like, "I'll work here for free for a week, and at the end of the week, you fire whoever's not as good."
Yep.
I'm like, that is so
So
smart,
baller.
so ballsy.
Yeah.
So ballsy. That's
Elbowing
crazy.
her way in there.
Wow, man. Yeah, it's reading this book is making me like even reevaluate my life a little bit, because I'm looking
Okay.
at certain areas of my life and I'm like, could I Thrawn the shit out of this?
Yeah.
What if I tried to like put some sort of chess pieces into play and then see if it'll like that's just so ballsy. But anyway, you were saying about
I've been Thrawning you this whole time.
what?
I've been like, ooh, Hector's corners of his mouth are turning up. His level of his voice been rising. That hasn't allowed me to deduce anything.
Right,
but
you're
I've just been practicing.
making those observations.
Exactly.
That's really smart, Jesse. That's
Yeah,
really smart.
I'm working on
it.
Yeah. So I was into Arinda Price's storyline from the get-go because her parents got screwed over.
Sure.
And I liked how she very smartly, very politically, very Thrawn-like went in and kind of went around people's backs and set up a deal. And I also can really relate to the idea that like if you live in the Star Wars world, I feel like I would want to live on Coruscant as well. It's like the New York City of the world. It's the central hub. It's the big city. It's, everywhere else is Tatooine, and it's like there's nothing out there.
Yeah.
Coruscant to me represents the world that Luke thinks about when he looks up at those twin suns setting. You know what I mean? Like just be in an important
The bright
place.
center of the universe.
The bright center of the universe, even though that's not really what Coruscant is. It's like an underbelly of a bunch of bullshit and a bunch of stuff. So, but there was a middle section of Arinda Price's storyline where I wasn't quite engaged, but now that we're sort of looping back around, I'm really interested to see how it plays out. I think that they will ultimately help each other in a way that will set them, especially now that I know that she's on the show.
Yeah.
She's in Rebels. She's not going to die. Eli Vanto, that dude is dead.
Yeah, he's toast.
That dude is dead. What do you think about Arinda Price so far?
Very similar to both your takes.
Yeah.
Our first introduction to Arinda it's about like embezzlement, and it's all just kind of, and she breaks out a bunch of accounting figures, and I'm like, what are we doing? I want to listen to Thrawn mess some fools up.
It's fine that there's no lightsaber in this, but what are we doing? There's no Jedi's fine, but come on.
Once I was like, who is this Arinda Price person? Figured out she was on Rebels. I was like, okay, well, this is important because she eventually becomes an Imperial officer.
Yeah.
So eventually what we get to in Thrawn is kind of this parallel story between Thrawn and Arinda, where we're watching a non-human alien, and a woman.
Yeah.
Kind of grind it out and climb up through the Empire's ranks and see what that looks like.
In a place that is difficult for both of them to do it for different reasons.
Absolutely.
That's a great point. I didn't even make that connection.
So at the very least, what's really cool is being able to kind of see what that looks like inside the Empire, like you were talking about, because we've never seen that before. Like, how does one get to be a Grand Admiral of the Imperial Navy?
Yeah, totally.
Now we kind of know, or at least we have an idea.
In Rogue One, it skips. Ben Mendelsohn shows up in the beginning, and then all of a sudden he's like in the white cloak, and I don't know if he's a Grand Admiral, but he's there with Tarkin, and it's like, well, how do you rise in the ranks? You know, so you don't really get to do those kind of deep dives. So what do you guys think of this section so far? And for you guys in the chat, we can talk about this section specifically, 8 through 15. I know we kind of mentioned it before. It seems like it's a lot of setup.
Yeah.
You know what? It might not have been as engaging as the first section, but overall, how would you guys rate it? And are you looking forward to the rest of the book?
I'm definitely looking forward to the rest of the book, because basically where we're at now is Act 2.
Yeah.
Act 2 is when it slows down. Act 2 in Rogue One is where everybody starts talking about their feelings. When all you want to do is see Darth Vader tear some fools up in the tent of fire.
Get the scarif already.
Exactly. That said, the second act of this book has been pretty engaging. I think it's built on what we found out in the first. But if you're asking, does that make me excited for the third? You're always excited for the third. That's when Eli Vanto's going to get screwed.
I can't. If it happens, it's going to crush me. I'm
prepared.
Again, it might not. What was the name of the character? T-Boys, I think you said it. You said it, Jesse.
Gilead Pelion.
Gilead Pelion.
He's like super old though.
People have already been making the connections, and you guys in this chat have been saying it too. That like it seems like the Lucasfilm Story Group, it seems like Disney, it seems like publishing is looking at EU stuff and kind of being inspired by what they want to be inspired by, and putting it into their new stuff, and sort of reimagining it, if you will, for like a new audience and making it canon.
And I almost like this story better. Like, I would want his second in command to be the dude that's like his ensign that starts off from the beginning, and it's just like, no man, I'm gonna take care of you kind of thing. Like, that's the thing, is like anytime we're like it's not even a buddy cop, but it's like this whole thing of like them doing it together, and you've seen this resentment, but I'm like, no, like there's parts where he has, Eli has these moments where he's like, God, it'd be so much easier if I just dropped him like a bad habit and left, right?
For sure.
But then he sticks with it, and there's times where Thrawn's like, I'm concerned about, like, where, I guess that is weird that he's still in. So I'm like, no, like, come on, don't end the bromance, don't do it.
Yeah. So this is, Game of Thrones did this to me. It ruined me. So because now, thinking that same thing, those exact same points that you just mentioned, I then ask myself, in any story, whether it's a movie or a TV show or a comic book or a novel, I ask myself, okay, now what would be the most heart-wrenching thing that could happen?
Let's talk about
now,
it.
Lucasfilm and Disney and George R. R. Martin are not the
They're
same
totally
thing.
opposite.
Thank God.
Yeah.
But George R. R. Martin would kill the shit out of Eli
absolutely.
Vanto.
Absolutely.
But it would be the most messed up thing that could happen to that character, so that's always what I think is going to happen.
It would be a way to like, I feel like George R. R. Martin would do something where Eli would die, but knowing that he was being betrayed by Thrawn while he was dying, and then Thrawn would essentially have this thing of like, I set this up from like the first day that I met you. I knew that we would be here. We would land here in this moment, and that I would have to make a decision, and I made the decision that will benefit me, Eli.
And then he would bring out Eli's mom, who would be like, I set this up, and I never loved you in the first place.
It's too much. It's too much. That's what would happen. Thankfully, like you said, Jesse, Disney is not that.
Not the same.
Not the same.
Not the same.
But if there was ever a time for storytellers to go into some deep, dark places of the Star Wars universe, it's in novels like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like,
absolutely.
I wouldn't count him out. Like, Timothy Zahn might really break our hearts at the end, which is a real bummer. How are you guys liking Thrawn as a character?
Oh, he's one of my, he's always has been one of my upper echelon Star Wars characters, and that's only from the 3 books that we had him in. And this only adds to it. Like, he is tier 1.
I made this comparison last week. My favorite character from Star Trek is Khan Noonien Singh. Khan, played by Ricardo Montalban, and I guess kind of played by Benedict Cumberbatch, but Kind of.
No.
But Khan, because, and there's so many, all right, become. There's so many similarities between Khan and Thrawn. Their names rhyme, but also they are like brilliant tacticians. They're in many ways superior to the sort of characters around them.
They're
but
the
they're
ultimate
still
foil.
ultimate foil, but there's still like sympathetic aspects to them, and it's so fun to be a fan of a character who is the smartest guy in the room that he walks into, but still kind of gets set back and everything. So I have been really enjoying Thrawn as a character up to this point, and I think that Timothy Zahn's been doing a great job of making him not too disconnected. So how do you like the character Thrawn?
Same, yeah. I love Thrawn as a character, at least. Again, this is Ultimate Thrawn. So
yeah,
I
love
feel
that.
like,
I love
again, it's all those things kind of congealed together. It's the same author who created this character has a second run at this character, a new chance. And so I feel like this version of Thrawn is it's sleeker.
Yep.
Yes.
It's more
distilled.
boiled down, to distill to the essence of what Thrawn is supposed to be.
Very cool.
And we get to see him, or the same character, or the essence of that same character at a different point in his career, and how he climbed up. So I think that has all been super fascinating. I don't think that you could ask a Star Wars fan, hey, what do you think about this book, or about this character, and have anyone say like, no, Thrawn,
he's the worst.
Thrawn sucks.
Yeah.
Thrawn's awesome.
I agree.
Have you, as you're reading it, for no reason whatsoever, is this bias towards me? Have you had a more positive view of the Empire as you're reading it?
He's an Empire guy. He's an Empire guy. Jesse, where do you fall? Are you more of like fans of like the Rebel Alliance and those characters, or the Empire and those characters?
I guess if the lightsaber that I paid a lot of money for and I own, and might be upstairs at my desk right now, is green.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
I think that should tell you everything you need to know.
Sure.
Yoda. There you go. That's a great response.
Playing with red is fun every now and again, but I'm more of a green guy. I think I agree with. I identify more with the Rebel Alliance.
I love it.
But as bad guys, the Empire is fucking cool.
They're the coolest.
They're the coolest.
And I've never.
So I can say I'm not Empire.
Look at Courtney
but
showing
I love
off her
Empire at the same
tattoo.
time.
Look at that. Look at that. There it is.
Let's see it.
What is it?
It's the Imperial crest.
That's so cool.
Wow.
Am I allowed to show skin on this?
Yeah, you can show some skin.
I mean,
you got some
do
tats.
I have some Death
I don't have
Stars
to
on
show
my?
mine.
Did you have to show yours that you just got at Star Wars
That's
Celebration?
great. Yeah.
Never forget Death Star.
Yeah, I
1.
got mine at. See if I can show it to that camera.
Oh,
Look
that's
at that.
cool.
Look at
Can
that.
you guys see that? Yeah. So
Best of both
here.
worlds. Oh, that's perfect.
Luke,
Yep.
Vader,
That's dope.
and the scoundrel wins the day. So
Well
there you
done.
go. So that I think that tells
I
you
love
everything.
that
You,
we
you
just
have
showed
you have a
Death Star.
yeah.
Yeah.
There you
Rebels.
go.
Yep.
So there you go.
I love that everybody just showed their tats. I think that's so great. I've got nothing to show for it, but I will say this, Bert. I will say that like ever since the first Clerks, with that argument of like, oh, all of the poor independent contractors that blew up with the second Death Star.
Yeah.
I never bought into that. I was like, no, it's the Empire. Like they're fucked up dudes. Like I never bought into it. Honestly, not until reading this book am I sort of realizing like, look, there are not people that are, to quote Star-Lord, 100% a dick in the world of Star Wars. And I think that seeing this side of characters that are like, they're just trying to live their life. They're trying to essentially have a career. And in this world, one of those careers is a Navy-style military career in the Empire.
Yeah.
You run a ship. You work for the Empire. You do this, you do that. You stop smugglers. You stop criminals. You stop pirates. Like, they're in the right in that respect. But I still think that
You kill Jedi if you can find them.
crazy. It's like that's the thing that I'm like that I kind of struggle with. I still struggle with that. But what I'm almost more interested in, this book is doing a really good job of getting me interested in the original Thrawn novels.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is where Grand Admiral Thrawn took over for the Emperor who died. That I'm interested in. I'm like, what happens to this world once the evil Emperor and Darth Vader die and Luke killed him, essentially, and like the good guys are celebrating on the moon of Endor? What happens next? There's entire infrastructures and economies and like planets that rely on the Empire to run its business the way it's being run. What happens? So Thrawn takes over. Now then he's the bad guy and he's fighting Luke and Luke's friends and their heroes. But I'm like, I'm still interested in like what happens to the Empire?
Well, that's now explained in canon in the Aftermath books. There's
in the
it's a trilogy
Aftermath book.
of
I'm going to check
them.
those out as well.
I'm
for
almost all the way through Empire's End, which is the last one. But basically, that picks up almost directly after the end of Return of the Jedi. And it's interesting because sorry to interrupt.
Please.
The original Thrawn book, or the original Thrawn trilogy, and the Aftermath trilogy, in terms of the chronology of where they fit in, are kind of in the same space.
Sure.
And the reason, or the way that they're different now, that Thrawn now appears at the beginning of the Empire instead of after the end of it, totally changes, I think, what his motivations, his goal motivations have to be.
Yeah.
Because at the end, in the original EU novels, he was just like any of the other opportunists who wanted to take over the infrastructure that was left when the Emperor was thrown down that really poorly placed reactor shaft that was in his office.
Yeah, in his office.
Bad idea. Anyway,
First fix.
well, I mean
That's
that's not the
Emperor
worst.
Palpatine, did you want us to put up a wall? Because this is a pretty cheap.
He's like, no, you know what?
leave it.
We have other design flaws that
Yes.
need to be fixed
Yes.
before
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But no, if he's at the end taking over what was there before,
The power vacuum, right?
now he's just a cog in the wheel.
Yeah.
So his and I haven't got a clear sense of that from this book yet, as to why the Empire. Why or were they just the first one to come across this exiled planet? And he says,
Interesting.
I'm going to grind my way up through their ranks.
Yeah.
Or is there something greater? I think with Thrawn, it has to be something greater.
Yeah, there was something in the beginning, early, where Eli Vanto or somebody said, well, you'll have to take care of that problem once you're a Grand Admiral. And he was like, interesting. And I feel like everything is.
And then he says, I will do that as fast as I can.
Yeah.
And then Eli Vanto was like, well, he's not messing with me.
Yeah. And
Because
I'm thinking that at the end of this book, if we can talk a little bit about like what we think is going to happen at the end, I think that there's going to be a moment where Thrawn might take revenge on his own people that exiled him. I feel like with the power of the Empire, he's going to do something to like, and now my people are wiped out, or so like, and now they bow down to the power of the Empire, which is essentially me, which essentially makes me the most powerful person on this planet. I feel like there's going to be something about the Chiss that is going to come back full circle. That he seems like a character like that.
Because there's also got to be a reason why the Chiss don't appear beyond that point.
Exactly.
Because this is a pretty. This is right in the middle of the canon now.
Yeah.
It's right.
Why
smack
wouldn't
down in the
why
middle.
wouldn't
we don't
Thrawn-
see them on either side of this?
Totally.
And something at the end of this book, I think has to.
It's going to be. I think it's going to be an Eric Cartman, Scott Tenorman, who made you eat your parents moment. Like I really believe it's going to be this like. What the fuck, Thrawn? Like he's gonna do something so evil that he's gonna turn from Bart Simpson to Eric Cartman. Where you're like, whoa, this guy's full on evil.
And now he's drinking the tears.
Yeah,
He's, like,
exactly.
really
Your tears,
Chiss.
Chiss.
So great,
Oh, the
isn't
tears
it?
of the Chiss are so great, Chiss. Keep crying your tears,
So
Chiss.
delicious.
Jesus, maybe he might do that to Eli.
Why would you? Now it's out there. That's gonna happen.
Man, guys, thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Thanks
This
for
was
having
so
me.
much fun.
Yeah,
I'm
this
so
was great.
glad. Here's the other thing too. Like Maude and Rachel were unfortunately unable to do the show. In the world of working at the offices of Nerdist and Geek and Sundry, you could throw a fucking rock. And because we were like scrambling for 2 minutes. Like, do we know any Star Wars? Yeah, we know definitely. We know a few. We know like
There's a few who work here.
We know like the Star Wars guys. So
Yeah.
we'll have them on the show. So big thanks to
Thank you
Jesse
for
and Bert
having
for coming
us.
on.
Yeah.
Your homework, guys, in the chat is to read up until chapter 24, which means read chapters 1 through 23. Stop right at the beginning of 24. Also, don't forget that we're on Goodreads. Search Alpha Book Club and come discuss with us. Also, don't forget that on our spin-off show, Alpha Comic Book Club, I'm gonna promo this right now. We just got Star Wars Volume 1 by Jason Aaron and John Cassidy that we're going to be talking about it Monday. So go get Star Wars Volume 1, the Marvel Comics Star Wars. Again, just feeding into this conversation that we're having about the new canon, all that stuff. So go get that and check us out 6:15 p.m. right where you're watching this thing right now. Be sure to follow these guys on social media to hit up all of their cool stuff that they're doing. Jesse was one of our correspondents on Mothership for Star Wars Celebration, which was awesome. Bert runs a Star Wars role-playing game show, so go find Bert and find all that information. If you guys are interested in joining us via Skype on the show, let Courtney know in the chat, and she's going to help move that process forward. And be sending your recommendations to @Nerdist, @Geek and Sundry, and @Join Team Alpha with the hashtag Alpha Book Club for the next book that we're going to read next month, because a little birdie told me that in addition to myself and our two regular co-hosts' picks, I think moving forward we're going to pick a fourth pick sort of randomly from you guys, so that you're going to have four choices to vote from for the next book to read for next month. So right now, guys, stick around for Choose Your Destiny, and then afterwards it's Crafting Comics with Jim Higgins and Tiffany Smith. You don't want to miss them. We'll see you guys next time. Mwah. Bye. May the Force be with you always. Bye. Great job, Jesse.
That was
awesome.
super.